Welcome to the AUA Inside Tract Podcast. Today's Inside Tract Podcast explores women in urology leadership and is brought to you by the Residents and Fellows Committee. Dr. Megan Stout, a urology resident at Ohio State Wexner Medical Center in Columbus, Ohio, sits down with Dr. Seideman, a pediatric urologist at Oregon Health and Science University's Doernbecher Children's Hospital in Portland, Oregon, to discuss their thoughts and perspectives on women in urology leadership.
Hi, and welcome to the AUA Inside Tract Podcast, where we're having a special segment today with women in urology leadership. My name is Megan Stout. I'm a current PGY3 urology resident physician at The Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio. And I have a special guest with me, Dr. Seideman, a current pediatric urologist and assistant professor in urology at the Oregon Health and Science University and Doernbecher Children's Hospital. Casey, thank you so much for joining us.
Megan, thank you so much for having me today. I'm so excited.
And just to get started and kind of introduce yourself and what we're talking about women in urology leadership today, kind of just give us a brief description of your career path to urology up to this point, and the position that you are as a pediatric urologist today.
Yeah, so I think like many people who end up in urology, I didn't even know what urology was as a field until I was well into my third year of medical school. I think I went into medical school fancying myself to be a cardiologist until I actually hit the wards and discovered that that wasn't for me. So I really found that I was gravitating towards the surgical fields, and it wasn't until I had the opportunity, which was really just a chance encounter, to scrub into a urology case where I discovered that this was something I was really interested in. And when I decided that I wanted to go into urology, the first thing that I set out to do was to find mentors. And I think that when I reflect on my career path, mentorship is a really important part of how I ended up where I am today. And one really important experience that I resonate on is the very first person that I approached for mentorship told me, well, you're a woman and maybe urology wouldn't be the right field for you. You should consider going into pediatrics, or if you're really bent on a surgical field, you should consider OBGYN. And I think that that's definitely played a role in how my career has unfolded, because I did not take that advice, obviously. And I found another mentor who wholeheartedly supported me. And I ended up doing my residency at UT Southwestern in Dallas, Texas, where I felt really well supported and my career developed. I did a fellowship in New York in pediatric urology, and I found myself moving out to the West Coast for a job in Portland, Oregon as a pediatric urologist. And I would say clinically, I'm a pediatric urologist, but non-clinically, I definitely have a vested interest in helping develop women in leadership.
That's an awesome story, and I'm sure very similar to a lot of other individuals in the field of urology in general, but let alone females or women in urology too. I think highlighting the mentorship role or pivotal people that make an impact where they realize it or not kind of lead us down a certain path or road. But to build upon that, and what brings you here today, is what does it kind of mean to you to be designated a leader of women in urology? That's a high distinction and I think very cool. But what kind of roles or positions do you currently hold now that do you think you demonstrate leadership through?
Yeah, that's actually a really great question, because when I was first asked to be on the podcast, I was like, oh, who, me? Me? I'm a leader. But yeah, I do really have an interest in this. So I'll tell you a little bit about what I think makes me a leader. So I do lead a group at Oregon Health Science University that's actually university-wide, called the Gender Equity in Academic Healthcare and Medicine Committee. And this committee has women and actually gender diverse folks from across the university who are committed towards things like closing the pay gap and equitable practices in healthcare and medicine.
Wow.
And that's been a really,
awesome,
really huge area of growth for me in terms of leadership development and in terms of understanding how to function as a leader. I would also say that everyone in medicine and healthcare is a leader, because a leader is really someone who has to work with a group of people and maximize their potential. So if you're teaching residents and medical students, you are a leader. If you have any kind of role where you're working with other folks and that they depend on you, even just being in the OR, being a surgeon, I think that that's leadership. And so I think that it's really imperative that we start to reframe the way we think about leadership. And I also think that that's why it's so important that we discuss leadership skills and leadership development, and that we work on these things at an early point in your career.
I agree with that as well. I think kind of having leadership curriculums, at least starting at the residency level, even when introducing, or even as a medical student, and encouraging us to go into these fields that maybe we're lacking confidence to pursue or whatnot. I think it's very important to have that guidance or structure along the way. On another hand, I think the role of leadership has evolved completely, where now we're in this age of social media. And funny enough, you have a very large social media presence, specifically Twitter, which has become very influential in the world of not only urology, but it seems like medicine in recent years in general. Do you think social media can play a role in establishing a more prominent role or presence in the field? And how can individuals be recognized as leaders through the power of social media?
So I am a huge fan of social media and Twitter, and I think that those of you who are on Twitter would say the same thing. So number one, I think social media is really important for developing community. So what you may notice as a woman in urology, when you go to take your first job, maybe you're the first woman in your practice. Or maybe you're not surrounded by a community of women and you're not really sure if other people are having similar shared experiences. And so Twitter is really wonderful because it breaks down physical barriers. And especially during the pandemic, when we weren't traveling and going to meetings, it was actually a really useful forum to discuss what was going on in your day-to-day life. So number one, I think it develops community. Number two, I think that you can utilize social media to help establish a presence in your field. I 100% think that Twitter has been very helpful for developing my career and has connected me with folks across the field of urology that I may not have been connected to otherwise, which is really powerful if you think about it. And I think that the last important thing about social media is that it's a great equalizer. I will interact with a medical student and I will interact with a chairperson all in the same conversation, and everyone has a voice in that thread. And I think that that's really wonderful. And I think that that has sort of shape shifted how we think of leadership development, conversations in medicine, and really growth in terms of your academic career.
Absolutely. I agree. I feel like just through the recent years of being introduced to Twitter and understanding the entire field of urology, especially, I feel like I've linked with people across the country, and it's a very cool, powerful way to connect and communicate. But also looking at what quality or traits that you've maybe seen demonstrated by those around you, maybe that you've connected through Twitter, through their words, or in-person interactions with our recent in-person AUA event. What does a good leader demonstrate or possess? And then also, have you found any roles or traits that have been harmful or destructive in leaders that you've seen?
Yeah. So I would 100% say that to me, one of the most important traits in a leader that I look to or admire would be authenticity. And so I think when I look around, whether it be on Twitter or at my home institution or at the AUA, I really gravitate towards folks who I think display authenticity to their true selves. And I think that that's sort of hard to describe, but easy to pick up on when you interact with folks in person. They can really give that sort of that feeling that they really care about what they do and they pour themselves into their work in a way that's meaningful. I also think there's a lot of different ways of describing leadership roles, and there are different types, so to speak, or styles of leadership. I also think that I really enjoy sort of interacting with folks in leadership roles who have a coaching mentality. So they look around and they see the people they work with, and their goal is to maximize those people using their already natural skill set. So I'm a big fan of sports movies, even though I don't play any sports, full disclosure. And I not so recently, watched the documentary that was on Michael Jordan, and I was really fascinated by the role of the coach. So you have these totally phenomenal basketball players, but they all have their own individual strengths. And how do you take this amazing group of folks and turn them into, a gold medal winning team? And so I think that the role of the leader is really the role of a coach. There's a lot of overlap there, and you have to work with what you're given. You have to maximize people's potential. So I think that I see that across the country, especially on Twitter. I see other chair people sponsoring the people that they work with and mentoring other people across the country. And that's a really valuable trait to have as a leader, and something that I admire very much. In terms of harmful or destructive traits, sometimes I think maybe that's easier to point out, right? Because when you experience something, you're like, oh, I did not like that. I would say that the old paradigm of a leader being an authoritarian type of figure where they make the decision and don't necessarily take the input of the folks around them, I think that that's no longer a viable leadership paradigm in medicine. And I don't think that that's the most effective way to lead anymore, especially when you want to lead a diverse group of folks, whether we're talking gender, race, ethnicity, etc. So I think that I would really try to urge people to walk away from the old stereotypes of what leadership is and try to open themselves to new types of leadership. So a coach type of style or a delegation type of style. And I don't know if you've ever heard of the servant leader, but the servant leader basically really incorporates a lot of these into their leadership style to truly serve those who work with them in the department, not the other way around.
I love how you phrased a couple points. The comparison of a good leader to a coach style. I did come from a collegiate athletic background, so the parallels I've seen from a lot of roles in my career and through athletics is uncanny. So I think that was spot on. And then I also like how you said that there's many different types of leaders, because there can be more of a coach, there can be more of a friend, mentors for different aspects of your career, but there can also be that quiet, steadfast leader, like you said, kind of serving others around them. So I thought that was very well put. In general, what do you see in the future of the role of leadership for women in medicine, and even more so urology specifically, where we are still known as a male-dominated field, and I feel like I'm still explaining to a lot of my family and friends exactly what I do. What do you see for us?
Yeah, so the first thing is, I think that we are still a little stuck when it comes to women breaking into leadership in medicine, and specifically urology. So you're right, urology is still a male-dominated field. According to the last AUA census, only 10% of practicing urologists self-identified as women. So if we take those 10%, we have to figure out a way how to retain them in the field of urology. So we need to work on promotion and tenure. We need to work on giving them academic opportunities to develop themselves. And then I think ultimately we need to see more women working their way into higher levels of leadership, whether that be the AUA executive board or being a chairperson at an academic institution. I think we're seeing some slow changes here. I think that it's amazing that there are more women chairs now than ever before, but I think that we're still very much in the minority. So in terms of the future, I think that I want us to think about it as a system. So urology and academic medicine is a system, just like a game. And imagine if you're playing a game, the rules are designed to be self-perpetuating. So if we don't change the rules, we will continuously get the same outcome. And I think that we're not going to see major change until we change the game. So I propose that we start to be proactive instead of reactive in terms of helping women reach the upper echelon of leadership in urology. And some of those ways of achieving that, I think, are through mentorship. So I would propose that we are more aggressive in mentoring women from early in their career, even in residency, that we establish mentors across the field, not necessarily at your home institution, but maybe at other places in fields that you're interested in pursuing. I think that it's important to have women mentors, but I also think that we have to identify men who are interested in being allies and mentoring women as well, because that's a really powerful relationship.
Mhm.
On top of mentorship, I think leadership development is an actual tool that is needed. Many leaders don't have formal leadership training, but I think women face some unique challenges. So, for example, how many times do you hear a woman being labeled bossy, right? It's pretty
Yeah.
common.
Yeah.
Full disclosure, I feel like I had been called bossy my entire residency, and maybe people thought that it was kind of funny or tongue in cheek, but men who displayed the same characteristics were basically touted as natural leaders while I was being called bossy. And so
Mhm.
we face unique challenges that our male counterparts don't face when they are in the same positions that we're in. And so I actually think that women should be offered formal leadership training to help them navigate the system, to help give tools to how to navigate the system. So that way, when you're put in positions, you know how to handle yourself, and you're not taken off guard when someone says, "Oh, you're bossy," or "Don't get emotional." So so I really think that leadership training should be formalized starting at the residency level, but honestly, I think continuously throughout your career, basically tailored to your needs. And then lastly, I think organizations need to value diversity when it comes to leadership roles. And I think that they should start being proactive about the way they incorporate that into their system. So I think that they should start to actively look on how they can change themselves to be more reflective of the folks who are entering urology now, because I think that it's currently more reflective of the people who entered urology many years ago.
I agree with that too. And I guess being designated as a leader, and I'm sure you're a mentor to many around them. Do you find yourself having limitations or barriers to reach out to others, or do you think through social media or just kind of having other former leaders around you kind of encouraging you to mentor people along? Do you feel like it's easy to develop that relationship if someone reaches out?
So I think that, first of all, I think there are limitations because I think we need more people to become mentors.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of young women in urology who are hungry for mentorship and sponsorship. And I think that we need to develop more people who are willing to be mentors and sponsors for these women who are moving up. I think that's a major limitation and a barrier. And I think that what would be needed is some funding, so some money to put towards these endeavors,
Mhm.
some space on a society level for these things to occur, because most of us do this on our own time. So, it might be after your day in the OR is done, you have a phone call with someone, but it would be really nice if there was some carved out time, space, and money for that endeavor. However, I think that for me, myself, my only limitation is the amount of time or hours that I have in a day.
Mhm.
I love connecting with people from all different areas. I really enjoy connecting with medical students who think they're interested in urology, and I try to make myself available to talk to them and kind of give them my perspective and help them along. I also really enjoy getting to meet residents from different institutions and interacting with residents at my own institution.
Yeah.
I've tried to institute a women in urology group at OHSU where we meet a couple of times a year. Sometimes it's just to have a picnic and talk. Sometimes it's to have some more formal education. Most recently, we got together and had someone give us a lecture on negotiation. And it was mind blowing how much people really wanted that. So,
Yeah.
you think, okay, maybe it's good to learn about negotiation before you get your first job, for example. But no, negotiation skills are actually really paramount. And I think that they should be taught from an early career perspective, but also continuously throughout your career, because there's a lot to be learned from the skill and the art of negotiation, especially as a woman.
That is a great idea. And I kind of want to bring that up at our institution as well. I didn't even think about that, but I love the meeting and gathering of just individuals at your own program when you're local too, just to know that you're going through the same issues or understanding kind of what events or barriers are preventing you from progressing the way you want to in your career or in life. additional question. If you had to say something to your younger self regarding your future career plans or endeavors and becoming designated as an eventual leader in the field, what would you tell her? What would you say?
These are always such a difficult question for me
Yeah.
because I'm a firm believer that you end up on the path that you belong on. And so I don't think that there should ever be an intervention with a former self per se, because
Mhm.
I believe very strongly I'm here where I am today because of the cumulative effects of everything that I've been through, good and bad. But I would say that if I could give advice to a younger self who is another person, specifically in a similar position, I would just say that you can do hard things, right? Like becoming a urologist is tough. Being a woman in a surgical field is tough, but you can do this, and you are going to be given the tools you need to succeed. You just have to keep an open mind, I think, and an open heart, and be authentic to yourself. And I think many of us stumble when we lose track of our own authenticity. Um, Oftentimes we're type A personalities and we sort of strive for things that are told to us, right? Like, oh, you have to get the top grades in your class and you need to do the most competitive specialty. I think that there is a really powerful time where you can sit down in your career and reflect on what you really want as a human and not what you think society is telling you. So if you want to be a leader in the field of urology, just allow that to happen and put yourself into the arena. If you want to be the best urologic oncologist, like go for it. Seek training, seek sponsorships, seek mentorship. If you want to go into private practice and just kill it and live close to your family and have a really wonderful relationship with your patients and grow a career, yeah, you should do that too. You shouldn't feel like the pressure from the outside world is telling you what to do.
Well said. Agree with all of that completely, and appreciate all the thoughts and words. I'm sure the listeners do too as well.
So Megan, before we wrap up, I have a question for you. So you said that you're a resident at the Ohio State University, which means that you are one of the few urology departments that has a woman as a chairperson. And so my question to you is, do you feel like that has provided you with any unique insights about what it's like to be a woman in a leadership role? Or do you feel like it's normalized to you, and so it's really helped you figure that women can take leadership roles more easily?
I want to say, first of all, it has been an incredible experience joining the institution that had a female chair. That's one of the reasons I was drawn to Dr. Lee in the first place, just going through the interview season, because there was someone like me that I could identify with myself that found a way to lead others around her in a powerful environment. And then when you look at just our individual residents in general, I think you said kind of the comfortability applied to that as well. Our residency is about 50-50. Our entire chief class this year is all females. And I think that this year has been very special and powerful to look up and see that we have 3 females leading our department. They're running the show. We all answer to and respect them, and seeing them grow through the years, just through my 3 years of being here, has been incredible. And I think it does open my eyes that there are possibilities of what I can do and grow, and that there is no, I guess, figuratively glass ceiling, quote unquote, that you can do big or great things if you want to. But I do think seeing someone that I can identify or mirror with myself was a huge player in that impact. And so I don't know if I would have the same feelings if I didn't go through this experience at Ohio State. And it's been a very, very cool experience. And I think my growth as a person and individual and maybe future leader is better for it.
I really love to hear that, because I do subscribe to the thought that you can't be what you can't see, that representation does really matter. And I do think that there are going to be institutions like the Ohio State University where you're going to see more women pursuing leadership, because they were surrounded by it during the early part of their career development. And so I really hope that there will be some organic growth because of the growth that we're seeing now. But I also think that it requires some intentional growth. So I'm glad that the AUA Inside Tract invited us to talk about this today.
I am too. Well, thank you, Dr. Seideman, for joining us today and taking the time out of your schedule to talk to not only me, but the listeners about a woman in urology leadership and kind of the future of leadership in general. And thank you again to the AUA and AUA Inside Tract Podcast for joining us and allowing us to speak today.
This has been an AUA Inside Tract Podcast brought to you by the Residents and Fellows Committee. Check out the AUA University podcast for weekly episodes on the latest clinical updates and advances in urology. For more information about the AUA and membership, visit auanet.org.